Are we ready to, okay, go ahead and call the meeting to order? We need to amend the agenda to include election of officers. So if I could get a motion to add that to the agenda, amend the agenda for that.
I move we add election of officers to the agenda tonight.
I have it placed under at the end of new business. Is there a second?
This is Kim. I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I move to approve the agenda as amended.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 I've been asked to ask the board members to state their name when they have comments or are going to talk for the purpose of the public out there. Approval of the board minutes from September 28th, 2023.
This is Joe Stratman. I make a motion to approve the minutes from the September 28th, 2023 meeting.
This is Heather Khan, and I second that.
All in favor?
Excuse me, Jared.
Yes.
There was one typo I noticed in the minutes. Molly Tiber's name is misspelled. It should be Taiber. So if that could be changed.
We will, all in favor of approving the minutes with that typo change.
Aye.
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 Do we have any visitors' comments?
Hello, everybody. My name is Jordan Stafford. I am here to speak on behalf of Kinderskog and just advocate for what a great program it is. Most of you know me. I've worked in healthcare here in town for about 10 years and also spent 5 years in early childhood education. In regards to Kinderskog, both my children have had spent time in this program. My oldest started when she was almost 6. My 5-year-old started this last summer. Kinderskog is not only a childcare option, but a childhood enrichment program that offers our children lifelong skills and benefits. The kids learn outdoor valuable safety skills, which are important to have for children growing up on an island in Alaska. They learn the basics of environmental safety and how to protect their bodies from the elements. Excuse me. They're learning navigation skills on the adventures they go on. They learn spatial awareness and how to look around them for signs of danger, such as bears, cars, and incoming weather. They learn how to build fires, handle tools and sharp instruments, or test a body of water to see if it's too deep to jump into. They learn how to take risks and respectively how to accept the natural consequences that come from the risks that they choose to take. They learn teamwork. They're getting fresh air and exercise after school and burning energy in a playful environment with friends. By being exposed to the elements, they are building their immune systems and absorbing natural vitamins and minerals while enhancing their senses. They even volunteer around town, helping humanity in progress. They visit the residents of long-term care and bring them handmade cards and show them cool things that they found on their adventures. I can't tell you how much joy the residents get from interacting with the kids. They talk about it for days afterwards. All the while, it's teaching our children to respect and include the elderly, to accommodate, to have patience, and be accepting of others. It's teaching these kids that volunteering can be fun while benefiting others. They're learning how to be part of a community, be helpful, humble, kind, and generous. My son can show you how to whittle a stick into a spear or a garden gnome. My daughter stopped one of her friends from eating berries that could cause an upset tummy, and then educated her on the difference between the berries that they found and what she thought it was. I even learned something new that day too. My son tells me all about the older boys who show him how to catch fish, or how one saved his shoe from a muskeg hole, which taught him how meaningful it is to do something nice for somebody, especially the little guys. The mentors at Kinderskog have all gone through certifications such as first aid, CPR, cold water safety and rescue, wilderness teaching, counseling, mental health, and some have college degrees in child education. Both my children have formed positive relationships with their mentors, and we all know the saying well, it takes a village to raise a child. My children had amazing childhood education and experiences at childcare facilities we do have. However, there is only so much space available. This last summer, we faced the challenge of just too many kids and not enough space. My daughter was one of the older kids, the youngers were all moving up, and there just wasn't enough space in the classroom for them all. Having worked in that field myself, I know how challenging it is to find appropriate space and comply with the regulations that are set by state licensing. Here's a little hint, it's not easy. The challenge is not new. It's been a topic of discussion for many years now, and there's been an entire task force formed to work on the childcare crisis we have locally. 15 minutes a day of recess is what my kindergartner has in his schedule. He's too young for most after-school sports or clubs. As a parent who must work to survive or be in school to advance my career, I am grateful that our children have this program. The opportunity to explore, play, gain knowledge and experience in nature, all while progressing their social and physical development. I know that if this lifestyle and these skills and this knowledge is instilled in them now, it can influence the type of lifestyle that they live as adults and how they teach their own children one day. The mission of Petersburg Medical Center is excellence in healthcare services and the promotion of wellness in our community. I believe that Kinderskog helps Petersburg Medical Center achieve this mission based on the examples I have given: exercise, environmental safety, natural immunity, physical, emotional, social development, and a sense of being and belonging in the community. The list can go on. These can all have positive generational trickle-down effects, which can help build a stronger and healthier future for our community. While the kids are off in the wild accomplishing all of this, it helps working parents stay at work with reliable childcare, which helps our economy. It also helps healthcare workers like me stay at work so that I can continue helping care for patients and members of our community. In all of these ways, Kinderskog fits the bill in helping accomplish the mission of Petersburg Medical Center. I encourage the board to continue to support Kinderskog. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Gloria Andy Wallen, and I have close ties to PMC. I'm born and raised here in Petersburg, and I belong to a traditional Petersburg family with my dad was being a commercial fisherman and my mom worked at the hospital. Lois came to Petersburg along with her childhood best friend, Joy File Jansen, in the early 60s and worked as an RN at Petersburg General. She was formally trained in obstetrics with a solid background in general medicine. Their monthly parent open house at the Skog Den, and noticed that the PMC staff meeting going on upstairs at the Holy Cross House, as well as attending your meeting here tonight at the Assembly Chambers. I support the multi-use of the community's facility space wherever possible, and I do hope that that continues. That being said, my wish for the Kinderskog program is that it has a safe and secure location to build upon the activity it provides and numbers of families and businesses that depend upon after-school childcare services. I believe our entire community will benefit from continued long-range planning of the child care arena, whatever that may look like. And I pledge to assist wherever possible and whenever needed. So again, thank you on this for this awesome responsibility. It does not go unappreciated. And I know that Lois and Joy would both be so proud of you. So thank you.
Thank you. More comments, visitors' comments?
I wish they had a program like that when I was a kid. How many times have we heard that? And if you haven't heard it, listen closely. You'll hear it. I hear it from friends, grandparents, and from parents of children in other states. It's an outdoor wellness program for kids. How great is that? It gets better. It is consistent, well organized, always transparent, constantly merging with the community's need and helping facilitate the option of childcare so a new teacher can move to town and take a needed job in our community. It supports 1/3 of hospital staff The other 2/3 are families that are working in local government, fishing-related jobs, schools, or local businesses. I'm fortunate to say that my daughter has been present in this program for 5 years. SCOG has grown with her as she ages up, keeping her engaged in her age level activities, while at the same time, she is welcoming new kindergarten-aged friends. We're still finding out how beneficial this program is for her health and well-being. Her communication with the mentors has been the friend she needed to talk to that understands. She's being held accountable and watching others being held accountable. She is increasing and learning new outdoor skills and broadening her awareness in every corner of life. I could go on. KinderSCOG aids in community wellness. Our youth are connected with nature and each other. They're connecting individually and as a group. A genuine interest is held with each other and as a whole unit. This is directly helping children develop into healthy adults. Suit up and join the kids one day and you'll see for yourself how beneficial this program is for our community in the present moment and for years to come. Thank you for housing the KinderSCOG program and acknowledging that this is part of wellness in our town.
Thank you, Molly.
Thank you.
Good evening. I'm sure most of you know who I am. I'm Sarah Holmgren, but I wanted to come in this evening to speak in support of keeping the KinderSCOG program under the umbrella of Petersburg Medical Center. One of the missions of PMC is to promote excellence in healthcare services and the promotion of wellness in our community. What better way to promote wellness in our community for children ages 5 to 12 than outdoor playing, adventuring, exercising, and volunteering? Some would say KinderSCOG at its most basic, simplistic definition provides after-school childcare. But KinderSCOG is not one-dimensional. It's multifaceted. It's one of the top daily programs, but the swim club also comes to mind, providing wellness in our community for children who have aged out of traditional childcare. It not only provides the physical, but also mental wellness to our younger population, ages 5 to 12, every weekday. There are limited other school programs other than swimming that provide a positive, healthy environment for children to participate in. Our local parks and recreation programs, dance programs provide an excellent wellness program weekly and in the evening and weekends. But KinderSCOG is unique in that it's offered 5 days a week. It wraps physical, mental, and volunteering all into one program. I would venture a guess that most of those children, if KinderSCOG did not exist, would be at home, indoors, maybe even alone, watching TV, on iPads, or gaming. And although not a terrible way to spend some time, I think we can all agree it would be better spent outdoors in nature, running, jumping, exploring, building forts, and volunteering. KinderSCOG gives back in many ways, including the humanity and progress in picking up garbage along our streets of Petersburg. In the summer, KinderSCOG runs an all-day program. Our child, our youngest, has attended for the last 2 summers, and I can tell you when she went from an indoor kid to an outdoor kid, which was not a challenge that her father and I had been working on, but were unsuccessful. She's played, walked, fished, adventured all day, and her mental well-being during the summer months has dramatically improved from the previous summers. Children that remain active and engaged with their peers are often less likely to struggle with their health, school, and they have an improved mental wellness. I think that's the solid reason to keep KinderSCOG at Petersburg Medical Center and continue to promote wellness to our children in that age group. And I'll leave you with a few bullet points. KinderSCOG provides a safe supervision for children that would otherwise potentially be at home alone or unsupervised, thus providing mental wellness. It provides a safe place for kids to explore and learn about their surroundings and foster a love of nature and outdoor play, which is physical wellness. It potentially reduces the obesity rate among our local children and keeping them active for 2 to 3 hours after school every day, all day, even during the summer months, and even in some of our most challenging weather. That provides our physical wellness. It improves mental health among its participants. Studies clearly show physical activity and fostering a positive sense of self improves the mental health of children. That covers our mental wellness. And it instills a sense of caring for others and volunteering by helping others. Thank you so much for housing it so far, and I am just hope that you'll continue to put that forward and support the program that is so much needed in Petersburg. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments? None. We'll move on to communications received. This is a new thing on the agenda. We have 2 letters that were received in support of KinderSCOG. They're in the packet that is on the website and can be read. Board member comments. Joe.
Yeah, I would just like to thank Jim Roberts for his service on the board. Jim is passionate about maintaining quality health care in Petersburg, and that showed in his work on the board.
Thank you. Marlene?
I had one request from someone listening on the radio that all of us try to not use acronyms.
And I would just like to welcome Micah to the board. First meeting. Thank you for putting your name in the hat.
Thank you.
Any other board member comments? Committee reports, resource committee.
We met Tuesday afternoon and we would talk through investment accounts, financials, and we got confirmation that the 20 million from Treasury was in-house. And this is Heather Kahn.
Thank you, Heather. LTC committee.
Long-term care committee, this is Marlene. Long-term care committee met on Tuesday and went over the list of action items that have been accumulating and discussed which ones have been completed and which ones are still in progress. And are pleased to announce that the solarium has been repaired.
Thank you. Community engagement committee.
The Community Engagement Committee met and discussed some of the steps that have already been taken, such as having our board meetings on the radio now, encouraging the public to call the radio when the once a month 12:30 update on PMC is on the air. Board members are anxious to hear from people what their concerns and questions are. You can approach any of us. And in addition, someone told me, people really are busy. They don't want to come to meetings and they're hesitant sometimes to approach people. So I'm going to have some boxes around town where people can put their questions and concerns. All through this election period, we've been hearing that there are questions and concerns that people feel like they haven't heard a response to yet. I'm going to have a couple boxes Saturday at Oktoberfest where people can drop off questions, and then I'm going to be moving them around town to different places where people collect and try to hear what some of those things are that hopefully we can address.
Moving on to reports, I've got the Chief of Staff report.
This is Alice Huleback. I provided a written report. I don't know if anybody had a chance to read it and has any questions.
Did anyone have any questions for Dr. Hulebeck? Yes, Joe.
Dr. Hulebeck, you mentioned in your report that this is Joe Stratman, that you're actively recruiting to fill Dr. Heyer's position. What do you think would be like the best case scenario for that position to be filled?
If we could find somebody rather than a short-term locum who would be able to fill in for the time that she is gone, which we believe is about 18 months.
Any other questions on that report? Thank you, Dr. Hulebeck.
I guess I'll just add,
Go ahead.
though, that the dermatologist was here for the past 3 days, Cameron French, and I feel like it was a success. I think he saw close to 75 patients while he was here for the past 3 days, and hopefully he'll be able to come back. And I also feel that Dr. Garrison and the nurse anesthetist, Kelly Gebler, were also well received when they were here to perform colonoscopies.
Can I ask this is Heather Kahn, as a follow-up of how many are on the wait list for the dermatologist and if they would be extending their time here the next time around?
I do not know about the wait list.
Okay, I
but
did see it in another
Kelly
report.
probably
Yeah.
knows.
received about 120 referrals. So
Okay.
if we saw 75, you are in plans to kind of make another visit here soon too. Or I don't know if it's going to be soon, but we are
Okay.
hopeful that he will be back.
And how many times a year do you think that they will be coming back as planned? Dermatology, yeah.
I mean, he mentioned at least another time, like maybe 2 times a year, but we'll try.
Okay.
even- We would like to do quarterly if we could.
Thank you.
Clinic report.
This is Kelly's wife. I'm the clinic manager. I can answer any questions.
Questions for Kelly's report? None. Thank you, Kelly. Community wellness.
This is Julie Walker. I submitted a report as well. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Questions for Julie?
This is Heather Kahn. I was just curious about your scholarship program and how many scholarships actually went out.
I passed that one to Katie. You're talking specifically about the Kinderskog
I
scholarship
was,
program?
yes, under the Kinderskog, just this scholarship program was developed for eligible families.
We awarded scholarships to 8 participants this summer, and just under $7,000 in scholarship funding went out. And part of the reason for that scholarship fund was because we moved to a legally exempt program. So our families that qualified for state child care assistance no longer had access. And so we wanted to make sure we were still providing that level of assistance to families that had qualified.
I'll add that all of the scholarships came from fundraising. So we had done a couple of fundraisers and also a sponsorship campaign. So that's where the funds came for the scholarships.
And then if this is not an appropriate question for here, just looking at the wait list for that Kinderskog and how much with the exemption were you able to take off the wait list and how many are still on the wait list?
I think, are we going to cover that in our presentation?
Yeah.
We'll cover
wait,
that in our
yeah,
presentation.
thank
Any other questions for Julie?
This is Marlene. I was pleased to see that you were able to go up and do a suicide prevention workshop at the high school.
Yeah, Becky and Ashley have been doing that. Ashley Kawashima has been leading it, and Becky has been assisting her. It's been really good.
Thank you for that report. Dietary.
This is Jeanette Ely. I'm the interim food and nutrition service manager and the dietitian. I turned in a report kind of covering both.
Were there any questions regarding that report? Thank you. Home health.
Kirsten was on. I don't know if she was able to call back in. So,
Did anyone have any questions regarding that report?
This is Marlene. Do we have a date now for when the adult daycare program might be able to start?
I know that was there was some issue with the space, so they're working with PIA now to try to move the space up over that way. So I think it's contingent upon that.
Any other questions? Hey, quality and infection prevention. Were there any questions regarding those two reports? Thank you for those reports. Executive summary.
Okay, so this is Phil. Any questions? I have some updates. Seems like we're moving so quickly sometimes that what I put in there is almost already news and maybe even outdated. So, but a couple of things as mentioned, we received approval from the Department of Treasury through the governor's office that we were accepted for the $20 million which would cover the work building, which is the Workforce Education Resource Center. And I will have our project manager, Jay Farmwald, provide an update on that, along with our architect, Roy Roundtree, a little bit later in the agenda on new facility. Can cover some of those things. We did have some success with the solarium project, which, as I reported previously, with we had challenges with water leaking into the solarium and causing mold, and we had to shut down that area and get it completely redone. And it was thankfully done by I believe Bob Wilson, correct? Just want to make sure I have that correct, but did a great job. Have some new flooring in there. It looks really good on the surface. Underneath it is still a challenge when they were pulling all the sheetrock off. A lot of the metal studs were just completely rotted through, so he had to refabricate those with some wood, and it was pretty. Yeah, I took some photos, just pretty dire underneath the surface there, but it does look great. The outcome right now looks a lot better than it did for sure, and I'm glad to open that up again. I walked through there and it's really nice. So it looks nice. Also, PMC won or received a long-term care award, a Gold Pan Award for excellence in nursing home care during the recent Alaska Hospital and Healthcare Association conference. And there's a photo in there of our wonderful long-term care staff in my board packet. Welcome to Micah. I didn't know who she was until I met her today. So welcome to the board. Look forward to working with you. We had started the psychiatrist also just started, I believe. Dr. Hillebeck, is that correct today or recently? As far as this week, I should say, on providing some Tuesday, right?
Yeah.
So that project kicked off, and we're welcoming Dr. Taram. He's out of Juneau, and Pat Sessa, our lead behavioral health clinician, is helping with working and setting all that up through the grant, and that grant is part of the Rural Communities Opioid Response Program. Very excited about getting those services here at PMC as well. So let's see. Financial wellness. Jason will cover finances, new facility. Roy and Jay will cover that on my packet under workforce. I did start the CEO office hours, so I had my first one. I did have two brave souls that came down, and we chatted for my lunch hour, and that was fun. So I'm looking forward to continuing that going forward. And the other thing that's really sort of highlight is what Dr. Hillebeck mentioned as well. It's just getting some of the specialties, especially clinics, back or new into Petersburg, which is very exciting to offer the colonoscopy, endoscopy clinics back up. Really want to commend our nursing team on getting that going, and that's just a fantastic service to provide locally, in addition to dermatology. And we also had orthopedic specialist come down and just meet with me and toured our facility, and just potentially having establish some clinics there as well. So we're looking forward to some of those things. as we go forward. I think those are just the highlights. Again, I'll have any questions, feel free to ask.
Any questions for Phil? Thank you, Phil.
Jared,
Yes.
Kirsten, the home health manager, she said she can call in now if anyone had any questions about her report.
I didn't see any at the time, so,
I'll let her know.
but thank you. Financials.
Finance, yep. So we're just plugging in the financials, and Jason will go over those.
Pulling up, I can be able to show the financial statements here on the screen in just a few minutes, but as this gets loaded, just give a brief synopsis. The patient volumes are up in most areas of the hospital, and it's kind of a strange thing in our industry. We don't wish anybody to be sick, but we're very grateful that they choose PMC when they need healthcare services. And there was just a couple areas. We do see that the home health area is a little bit below our target. But all of the other areas are showing very strong volumes, including long-term care, acute census, lab imaging, those kinds of areas. Therapy is also down a little bit. Therapy is struggling with staffing. We've had a few people leave in the staffing area there. Set up correctly, it works wonderful. Okay, so I just wanted to highlight where we're at. We're really reporting on the first 3 months of the year, the first quarter of the year, and total gross patient revenues. We're about 644,000 above budget, and this is in light of the fact we haven't performed an increase in our charge master yet. We would typically do that in the fall of the year. We're working through a couple of things. We're waiting on the exceptional relief letter to come back from the state to be able to set some of that. So we're all of the increase, which was a big goal in order to meet our budget, is coming from increased patient volumes. Net patient revenue, we're up about $790,000, and total operating revenue about $973,000. We look at expenses. Here, the organization is doing a good job of maintaining our expenses just below budget. And so we see a cost savings there of about $479,000. So to date, our operating performance, we're seeing a positive variance there of $1,452,000. Then when that drops to the bottom line, we're seeing a positive variance or a positive performance of $645,000. Most of that, keep in mind, is due to the non-operating revenue line. You're seeing here just almost at the bottom here. Wanted to point this out. We've had some questions about that. Where do we see on the financial statements the revenues for the HRSA grant? Where will we see the Treasury grant? Can we see those different? And so you'll notice in the structure of the financial statements now, we have operating revenues and operating expenses, and then this section down below, we call them non-operating. They could also be called capital. That's the way I like to refer to them. We have our capital section at the bottom of the financial statements where we look at investments, we look at interest expense, gain or loss on the disposal of assets, and then this line that says other non-operating revenue, that's where we will report the revenue for the grants. And a key thing to remember there is we will record the grants in the year in which we earn it. The expense will not be reported until years in the future when we actually depreciate this. So it's It's kind of an atypical thing with accounting. Usually the first principle of accounting is you report the revenues and the expenses in the same period. And so I just want you and the community to be aware in the future, when you see that expenses are up, but there's no revenue to match it, it's because we already reported the grant revenue. Okay. So financial performance is doing well this year, and compared to the past 2 years, in 2021, we lost on an operating basis about $3 million. Last year, we lost about $1.2 million. And we're glad to see thus far this year, we are operating above the break-even line and doing well. 3 months doesn't make a year, but we're glad to see a good trend. And that has to deal with really the whole community, the organization in reopening programs such as colonoscopy and dermatology, various things, doing the things that need to be done so we can get our census back up on the long-term care. But it also has to deal with the community having faith in us and seeking us for care. It takes a whole community to run a hospital. On the balance sheet, the one thing that I just wanted to comment there is we are running a little tight with our cash flow. Right now, we are waiting on a couple of things to come through. One is the grant that we applied for back in June with FEMA. We're anticipating a check either next week or the following week, $220,000 coming through on that. All the paperwork's done. It's in process, and so that will help with our cash flow. And then as we applied for what is called exceptional relief in conjunction with our rebasing for the Medicaid rates. Every 4 years, the state goes through our costs to operate our long-term care facility, and they set a new rate. But we asked for an exceptional relief because they have a rule that if your costs go up above what your charges were, they won't pay you that higher amount, your actual costs. And there was a lot of inflation in 2022, and our new costs are higher than what we charged 2 years ago. And we asked for a relief that they would set that rule aside. They've denied that, but they did agree. They are increasing our rate about 24%. We don't have the final letter, but there was an indication in the documentation that we had as to what that new rate may be. And so we're crossing our fingers that is what will come through. So that will be some help, some great assistance there. But getting back to the conversation on cash flow, once they have their hearing and make that a formal and official, we will get a catch-up payment going back to July 1st. And so that's what's causing us to be a little light in some of our cash flow, is these government programs. And it really turns our business upside down. We run opposite. A fishery, you go out, you catch fish, and you sell them, and you try to maximize how much you sell it for, and you try to minimize your costs. Well, in healthcare, we're not paid based on what we charge. We're paid based on our costs. And that turns everything upside down. Why did I lean into that conversation? Jared wanted me to share with the board. As we go forward and we're really working on this plan to build a new hospital, why is that important, and how will it pay for itself? And certainly we want to try to pay for that building as much as possible with a grant. But I did point out, and everybody wanted to know, we're paid on our costs. The government sets how much they pay us based upon our costs. And depreciation is a cost that factors into that. And right now, we virtually have no depreciation expense in our financial statements because the building is so old. And so our reimbursements are very low. When we build a new hospital and we begin reporting that depreciation expense, our reimbursements for both Medicare and Medicaid will go up substantially. And that will lead to long-term financial viability for the hospital. It's very important for us. Organizations who fail to replace their buildings over time dwindle and really struggle financially. Organizations who rebuild and invest in their buildings tend to stay financially healthy because not only does their cost-based reimbursement go up, but also they're able to keep care locally. They're able to convince more of the people in their community who are on commercial insurance to stay local because we have modern, up-to-date healthcare facilities and healthcare services. So that's why it's important. So those are the highlights that I wanted to provide. We will have for the board, probably in the December board meeting, the audit has been completed. They came back with only 2 recommended or required journal entries they wanted us to make. One is on the PERS retirement program, which happens every year. They make that journal entry, and one had to do with our PTO. Both improved our bottom line as reported, and so we're looking forward to completing that audit report in the December financial statement. Right now, the finance team is working hard on finalizing the cost report. So here in the next 3 or 4 weeks, we will complete that and have, by the next resource committee meeting, an idea of the financial implications of the cost report. Will we owe Medicare money or will they owe us money? So that's important. Several other projects, but those are the highlights for the board. Anything else that I can answer for the board with regards to financial condition?
Questions for? Thank you for your report.
You're welcome.
Going to new business, PMC's youth program Kinderskog update.
We have some slides as well while we're getting those set up. I'll just introduce us. My name is Julie Walker. I'm the Community Wellness Manager where the PMC Youth Programs lives.
I'm Katie Homeland. I'm the Youth Program Coordinator and the co-founder of the Kinderskog program.
I'm Kelly Zweifel. I'm the clinic director, and the wellness program in Kinderskog lands and reports up through me.
So we were invited here by the board to give an overview of the pilot program that started about a year ago, our youth programs. It's primarily Kinderskog, but we will touch on a few of the other programs that we are also doing under the wellness program. So here we go. Because we all kind of come in at a different point in this history, I'd like to just give us a really quick rundown of how we got here. So back in about 2020, maybe even 2019, there were some needs assessments done locally around childcare. Those were kind of stemmed out of the SHARE Coalition and really highlighted some of the local needs. Then those needs were, of course, seen even more during the COVID pandemic. We held community cafes on childcare in 2021, I believe. And during this time, Kinderskog had been founded, and prior to that, and it was being run under the Lutheran Church as a specialized program under their childcare license. During 2022, I believe it was in May, the board approved a motion to pilot childcare, and that was really in response to the local needs of childcare. We opened position and hired Katie in August or July. We transitioned the existing Kinderskog program under PMC in August of 2022. That was a very smooth transition with no gap in services to families. And really proud of that transition. It went very well and have a very good relationship with the Petersburg Lutheran Church where the program used to live. We're actually renting a classroom from them now. So it went well. And it took a few months to become a licensed childcare program. Licensing is a beast and there's a lot of paperwork involved. So Katie did a really good job getting us licensed very quickly. And then we began running the program as licensed. What we found out as we approached summer and we wanted to expand how many kids we could serve. We went to the state childcare licensing asking for an exemption to help us serve more kids. And we were unfortunately limited to the physical size of the classroom that we were in, even though it is an outdoor-based program where we very rarely are in the classroom. At that time, the state actually advised us to move to a legally exempt program. This allows us more flexibility in what we do, and it allows us to serve the children in Petersburg and meet the needs of our childcare program locally, or childcare needs locally. So we moved to a legally exempt status in June 2023. Again, a lot of paperwork, a lot of administrative burden to get that legal exemption. But that's where we are today. That allowed us to expand the program significantly over the summer, which we'll talk about. We serve ages 4 through 14 through the various programs, Monday through Friday, as has been mentioned, and we are at the Petersburg Lutheran Church after transition from renting from the school. So our operating structure, we are, run under the Community Wellness Department. We have an advisory committee that is made up of some leadership within PMC, as well as we have a board member representative. Kim is our board member representative. And we report up to the clinic and, of course, report up to Phil and then you, your board of directors. I'm going to pass it over to Katie to kind of explain the different programs, because we always just call it Kinderskog, but there's a lot more going on than just Kinderskog.
So we actually hold 3 different state exemptions for childcare licensing. One of them is for the Kinderskog program, and within that we also have our Forest Kindy program that operates in the summer. We also have an exemption for our Orca camps, outdoor recreation, creation, adventure camps. And then our PODS program, our Play Outside Days, which is a summer program on Friday afternoons for slightly older kids, has its own exemption as well.
Okay, I'm going to give a very high-level financial overview. I'm not Jason or Joel, but these numbers came from Jason and Joel. So the numbers are broken into the sessions of Kinderskog. So we began in fall 2022. We expected that our income would be low because, as I said, we hired Katie, and it took a few months before we were serving kids, and had some startup costs. So the first term, we expected a loss. The spring, we did much better. We had some sponsorships and donations and fundraising that happened during the spring. Our expenses were similar, but we were bringing in more revenue during the spring. And then also, as expected, we made a lot more during the summer. We have longer hours during the summer. We also served almost double the amount of kids in the summer. So our revenue was much higher. We also started receiving grants, which we'll talk about in just a second. We received some pretty large grants that we were able to supplement. So our overall net income during the summer was pretty significant. Overall, the program seems to be looking pretty good financially. It's expected that we'll go back down in the fall and spring. We're still serving more kids than we did in the very beginning, but we don't expect to remain up where we were in the summer. So it's always going to follow this trend of summer and spring being, fall and spring being lower income wise, and summer really making up that difference. Down here at the bottom, you'll see this blue bold. It says cost report reimbursement. These are some numbers that we got from Jason. So basically, how I understand it is, this feels like a test, how I understand the cost report. So correct me if I'm wrong, Jason. But there's a portion of this program that serves PMC kids. About 33% of the kids enrolled are PMC employees. So those expenses, 33% of our expenses for this program, are eligible to be run through the cost report. And so the numbers at the bottom of the cost report reimbursement, which over a year is about $34,500, is coming back into PMC. I got it. I got an A. I got an A. Okay, great. I did good. Thanks, Jason. And then the bottom lines are the remaining grants that we have. The Lutheran Church is actually not a grant. It was a donation from the Lutheran Church. As we transitioned the program, they were able to donate some of the funds from the Kinderskog program that they had to help with the transition. So we have about $38,000 left of that. We also have the Alaska Community Foundation grant, about $50,000. We have 100% of it left. We also have, we missed on here, a second year that we're expecting from the AHA grant, the Alaska Healthcare and Hospital Association. Will be funding another year. So here's a few of the grants. We got a $50,000 award from the Alaska Community Foundation Fund and $50,000 from the Rasmussen Foundation. Both of those have no specific thing that we have to spend them on. They are just to support the operations of the program, and there are no timelines. So they're really open-ended, which is really beneficial to our program. The AHA is to support our summer staff positions. So we were able to use that to essentially double our enrollment because we had our staff positions covered by this grant. We'll be getting that again next summer. The Elks awarded us $2,500 to help with the Forest Kindergarten program getting started. And then we have Tlingit and Haida support payments that have been coming in on a fairly regular basis that we're able to put towards things like our rent. We received some mini grants. Katie, you're going to talk about those in the summer highlights section. And then down at the bottom, we're just showing some of the sponsorships and fundraising that has been done. Thanks to Bennett McGrath, who's going to be donating some of the proceeds from the pumpkin patch to the Kinderskog program.
I'm Kelly Zweifel, and I'm going to go over the enrollment. And so in last year, the fall of 2022 into 2023, we had about 34 participants. In the summertime, we increased to 123. And then this year, we're at 39 for our fall and for the fall enrollment. Our ratio of mentors to kids is a 7-to-1 ratio, which is a really good ratio. Our wait list for families is 59, and 27 kids came off the wait list this past summer during that time frame. And then talking about, Julie already mentioned this, but currently we have 33% of our PMC employees who kids are currently in Kinderskog. That has increased over the past year. Last year, at this time, it was 26%. And then each of the different programs, it's about 38% for the Forest Kindy. The Orca camps are at 43% PMC dependents, and the pods is 48%. Those later, the Orca camps and pods are a first come, first serve basis of enrollment. So it was open to everyone at the same time. And it shows that PMC staff were excited to enroll in those programs. Okay. One of the other things that was brought up with PMC taking on childcare in this pilot program was about staff retention and recruitment. We know that by having the program, PMC's staff employees have access to childcare. It also supports our childcare professionals to have livable wages that also have benefits to it. So that's something to be proud of. And then also PMC has been identified as a leader across the state. And I know that in some of these meetings in AHA, I've heard as Phil and the board came back that many people were coming up asking how to replicate the program at their levels in their hospitals. We've also been reached out from Juneau, from Bartlett and Juneau, Cordova and Homer have all contacted the program directly, either Katie, Julie, Phil, and we've set up meetings to talk with them about that. My role prior to this, I worked also in a hospital setting, but also in a wellness program. And we had a very similar program. So for 15 years, we ran a summer program and also did after school. It wasn't year round like Kinderskog is. But what I got to see over that was that I would see kids in the program, and then I saw them become high school assistants that worked with us. And then I even saw some of those staff that were high school assistants take on roles within the hospital and even become vice president of hospital services. So it was so fun to watch kids grow up and that retention kind of staying with in a hospital setting. I know some of the high school assistants we have now, I can just see them working in the hospital later on, and one is even working as a CNA too. So I do think it's a really good launching board for high school students to get employment, and they're working under other really qualified staff, and it's a great tool for retention and recruitment. I know for me personally, as I was looking for employment around the state and looking for things for my kids, they were young, and at the time, Kinderskog was not under PMC, but I found out that Petersburg had a nature program for kids, and it was a key reason why I considered Petersburg to be our new residence, because I knew my kids were high energy and they needed outdoor activity, and I've just been so impressed with that program.
Hey, this is Katie. So one of the changes when we moved to exempted programs is our advisory committee appointed a safety officer, and we invited Josh Rathman to fill that role, and he happily accepted. He is serving in that role as an independent person. He volunteers his time for us. However, the credentials that he has through his borough service and past service with the Coast Guard makes him an incredible resource to our program. So once a year, we sit down and, oops, it's just like automatically flipping through slides, sorry. We sit down and we go through our emergency procedures plan, our risk assessment and mitigation, the required safety related trainings that staff participate in, as well as we debrief all of our incident reports and plans of correction. Josh also helped us walk through our daily safety procedures and the physical space at the Holy Cross House. So we had our first annual safety audit at the beginning of October. Julie was there, I was there, and Josh. And overall, I think it was a pretty great safety audit. We had a couple of minor changes to our emergency procedures plan. Most of those had to do with moving our location to the Holy Cross House. We had to change a few things in there. And then Josh also recommended a few different safety related trainings, which we've implemented immediately. One of the exciting things for me, because I like spreadsheets a lot, when we moved to the exempted program, it also meant that we were not bound to use the state mandated reporting forms. And so staff were able to create and develop reporting mechanisms that are a lot more meaningful to our program. So we're actually reporting safety and behavior related incidences now. And I log them all in a spreadsheet, and we're tracking for trends. We're monitoring locations of those incidences. Keep in mind, most of these are like your basic first aid, or somebody reports that they have lice, like things like that we have to report. And we keep track of all of it, along with our ratios when these types of incidences are occurring. So it has changed how we're facilitating our program already. Oh, you get to read this.
Josh couldn't be here today, so he asked me to read this quote. And this is for those on the radio. Katie has done a tremendous job thoroughly outlining the Kinderskog safety plan. It seems she has considered any circumstances and or scenarios that she and her staff may encounter when with the children. I'm confident she is able to safely manage the Kinderskog program and train her employees up to her and her program standards. I have no doubt in my mind, if my son were in Kinderskog, he would be in safe hands. It is impressive to see the attention to detail that Katie has taken to keep the kids and her staff safe in the event of an emergency or even during their daily routine. In my opinion, as the designated safety officer for Kinderskog, Katie's safety plan is extremely solid and very well documented.
Okay, now for some fun stuff. Summer highlights. We were able to serve 123 kids this summer throughout the various youth programs, which is about 60% of our elementary school population. That's massive. We had 4 different programs, Kinderskog, Forest Kindy. We had our first theater-focused Orca camp with Mr. Brad, who is hoping to come back next summer and expand that camp. And then we hosted pods again with the help of our wellness department. We enjoyed a really fun day at the Kestrel with touch tanks. We had a tour and a dive demo. We had our 5th annual celebration of Mud Day, which is a huge event. We build 10 mud kitchens. The kids have a mud pie bake-off, thanks to Reed's for 1 ton of mud this year. And then they go muskeg swimming. And this year there was even slingshots of muskeg mud balls coming at us. So it's the highlight of summer. Our older kids got their annual trip to the glacier, thanks to Muddy Water Adventures. That was our 2nd summer going to the glacier. We celebrated Summer Learning Week, which is part of a national event. We welcomed new staff members, Brad, Noah, Kate, Lily, Serena, and Keely. We participated in archery days, thanks to help from Dan McMahon and Caleb Baird. We had 2 chartered fishing trips, thanks to the Alaska Children's Trust. And that was one of the best experiences that I got to have with kids this summer, because many of them were catching their first salmon. And just having the kids talking with Brandon Ware about fishing and subsistence and why it's important was a really incredible experience. I wish you guys could have all been on the boat. It was super fun. And then the thrill of catching fish, of course. We raised caterpillars and released butterflies. We got to help in the school garden. Lots of shore fishing. Wiffle ball was the game of choice this summer. And lots of capture the flag games. And of course, community service sprinkled all throughout that. We did the advisory. It's going so fast. The advisory committee released an impact survey for families that have been enrolled this past year since the transition to PMC. And it's still open, but the advisory committee is going to look at it at our next meeting. But I wanted to point out a few of the highlights from this 20-question survey. Some physical health benefits noticed by families. Everybody agrees that their kids get more exercise, more physical activity on days they attend Kinderskog. So almost 90% strongly agree with that statement. Their children sleep better through the night, sometimes through the day, returning from the glacier. Almost 70% agree. And I know from my own kids being in the program, there's times where we're so busy out skogging and adventuring that they fall asleep on the way home. And then they get a really great night of sleep and they're nice people the next day. So that's fun. Some mental health benefits, personal growth and increased self-esteem and confidence. Can see the majority strongly agree, but everybody who's responded to this survey, which there's about 30 that's responded so far, agree with that. And I put this picture up here very purposefully. This is Noah. He's awesome. With one of our little Skoggies. And this particular day, our Skoggie was kind of having a tough time. She was missing her mom. And so Noah walked her through those feelings, talked her through it, and they decided to make some ephemeral art. So this is her mom kayaking through the muddy waters of Skog Point. And that was how she was able to process those feelings with the help of Noah. I didn't put that in just because Matt's here either, but your kid is cool. Improvement in the following areas. Since their kids have been enrolled in Kinderskog, the blue lines are some level of agreeing. Any green lines you see are disagree, and there's no green lines. So the dark blue is strongly agree. Everyone is, or a lot of people are strongly agreeing that resiliency is increasing, creativity, patience, positive self-talk, confidence, problem-solving skills, and my personal favorite, the sense of wonder and curiosity, which is also an important skill to have, and it helps develop resiliency and allows you some tools to help get you through really hard times and even trauma. So it's kind of exciting to see those things noticed by our families. And in our impact survey, we have the opportunity for families to share a story. And this is one that we picked. So this is, I don't know who this was. It's an anonymous survey, so I'm going to read it, but it wasn't me. It's not a specific one-time memory, but oftentimes on the really rainy days, I wonder how my child is doing at Kinderskog. At pickup, they're always beaming with joy and are quick to say, "That was the best day ever." I think this demonstrates the ability of Skog staff to remain positive and allow kids to develop their resiliency. Best day evers should not depend on the weather. Every day has the potential to be the best day ever. So with that data from our impact survey, and hopefully with the support of the PMC board, some of our priorities moving forward, I think we can probably agree at this point, Kinderskog has never had a building to call our own, and we continue to grow despite that. We need a building. I would like to see my staff continue to develop. Some of them are enrolled in wonderful opportunities with our school district now to continue their education and their teaching or desire to become a teacher. Offering full day programming options during school break times. That includes winter break, spring break, and summer break. That is a goal of ours, but it does also tie back into this new building. And then American Camps Association accreditation. And this is something we would like to move forward on with Kinderskog because it is an approved exemption through the state for our families to receive child care assistance. So it opens up that financial assistance avenue for our families again. It is a long process though. It's like a year-long process. So those are some of our main priorities moving forward. And as a reminder, you can follow the adventure in lots of ways. We have a page on our website, we have a public Instagram page, and we do have a Facebook page. So if you're ever curious what our Scoggies are up to, there are opportunities for that. Oops. Does anyone have questions?
Questions?
I have a few.
Okay.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Heather.
This is Heather. So just for clarification, with the exemption program, with the exemption license, do you have a ratio?
There is no mandated ratio. In fact, our ratios have always been lower than the state required, even when we were licensed. And when I did that incident report spreadsheet, it always averaged out to about 7-1. And that's in part because of the activities that we're facilitating and the fact that we're outside with kids. And sometimes we're outside when it's really dark out. So we got to make sure we have low ratios to keep track of them all and keep them all as safe as necessary.
And then does PMC have a ratio? Not at this time. No. Okay. And then currently, right now, with serving 39, I believe, what is your current wait list at this time?
59 families.
So that was the 59. Okay.
And I can kind of mention as well, I do have staff that would like to be working more hours and more days. And we have a wait list. Our only barrier right now is the size of our space. Even though we're not inside often, we go inside to gear up. And if you guys want to see chaos at its finest, come at gear up time. It's a lot to manage in a small space.
And so space is an issue by the standards of the Petersburg Medical Center at this time under the program.
Yes.
Not from the state.
The state doesn't have any say in how we operate anymore because we're legally exempt.
I think that was all the questions that I wanted to be broadcasted. Could we get a copy of your slide deck?
Yes.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I just wanted to make comment that's looking at the amount of money that you guys have gotten from the community. It's an incredible amount of support for the growth from the local funding sources. And I had one question, and it may have been answered in there, but I lost it. Is there any government assistance for any of these kids at this time?
The only government assistance we're receiving is from the Central Council of Tlingit and Haida. They are still supporting our qualifying tribal families, and that's a decision their organization made because they value our program and what we are doing with kids. Our families do not have access to state child care assistance at this time. Once we finish that American Camps Association accreditation, we can reapply, and our families could potentially have that available to them again.
Yes, go ahead.
If you don't mind, I would like to add a little bit on that. Katie and I testified at the Governor's Council Task Force for Childcare, and we had an opportunity to talk with the group. Also, I talked with the person in charge of that task force, and we talked about they weren't aware necessarily of that specific issue, and they're interested in having another conversation and talking about that. So that might actually, I'm hoping, I shouldn't speak on that, but I'm hoping actually to see if we can make a change on that to make sure that we have that availability.
Any other questions for thank you for that detailed report.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Okay, we'll move on to new facility. Can bring Jay up.
Okay, and for that, always on speaker, and then I think I need to, wouldn't mind putting a post of his slide deck up there. So you can, no, he's got it. And then Jay can go get started while I get this going in the interest of time.
All right, Jay, you're on.
You want me to start?
Yes, please.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Last time I was before the board was the last week of July 27th. If you'll refer to the handout that was in your packet, there's a 2-page document titled Petersburg Medical Center Replacement. If you would turn to page 2, I'd just like to highlight some of the important milestones that have occurred since I last presented to the board. That last board meeting, again, 27 July, is when site work was authorized to begin at the appropriate time. That was by the board, and that was followed up by a borough assembly motion on the 21st of August. Also in August, we received the Army Corps of Engineers 404 permit, which is required to do work at wetlands. The following month in September, the final plat for the new hospital site was approved by the Planning Commission. And then earlier this month, earlier in October, the final environmental clearance, what we call National Environmental Policy Act clearance, or NEPA, was secured from the federal government. It's already been reported this evening with respect to the Treasury grant that we recently received approval of that $20 million. And that is a very significant milestone. I'll say a little bit more about that in a minute. But before I leave the site-related issues, I wanted to also report that this morning we received the final green light from the Department of Health and Human Services, who issued the original $8 million grant last year for the project. We received the green light from them to start site work. So there was a meeting this afternoon between the contractor, Dawson, the design team lead, Bettesworth North, Phil Hoster, and I. The consensus was that PMC should indeed begin site work. So a notice to proceed was issued by Phil this afternoon to the contractor to begin excavation and support of structural fill. No utility work will be done. It will be simply earthwork. The local subcontractor that was selected by bid is Road Construction. And so those activities will begin. And that's a major milestone, as should show progress, help with completing the funding stack. The Treasury grant, back to the Treasury grant. It was a very interesting process to secure the $20 million from Treasury. They had certain very specific requirements that needed to be met in order to harvest all $20 million. That has led to what was originally being called the support building, a small building to the west of the proposed new hospital, actually having to grow in order to meet Treasury's requirements and secure all $20 million. The building has been appropriately rebranded as the Wellness, Education, and Resource Center to comply with the requirements from Treasury. So, for example, in the building now, which is 19,000 square feet, the wellness department will be housed there. public health nursing will be housed there. There will be a new MRI suite that PMC will operate out of the well initially. The IT department will be there. There'll be a community internet resource center, which was very important to the Department of Treasury. And also all of the community and PMC training and education meeting room space is now centrally located in the what I'm going to abbreviate as the Wellness Center. Again, immediately left of or west of the proposed new hospital building, separated by a service yard that will be common to both buildings for delivery of goods and services. The next step, the critical next step, is to secure some funding from the state through the capital budget process cycle to allow start of the main hospital building, shell and core, as we call it. And the progress being made here shortly with the site work, I think, will be instrumental in helping convince the legislature to support the project for the next major phase. I'm going to now let Roy Raftery, the lead architect for the project, talk a little bit more about the site plan and the concept for the two buildings, the Wellness Center and the main hospital, that may be of interest to the board. So take it away, Roy.
And Jay,
you guys hear me okay, or should I call the other cell number?
Roy, why don't you go ahead and call my number?
Okay, we'll do it right now.
All right, Roy, you're on speaker.
Okay, great. Yeah, thank you for having me here tonight. Phil, will you have that site plan slide on the screen right now?
I do, yes.
Okay. As Jay mentioned, the Wellness Education and Resource Center has become a bigger building than originally thought, but it's going to be a great building, fully funded by the federal government, and we're pretty excited about that. The current site design for the hospital still has our main entrance out on Hagen. As you come into the site, there's a general slope up from the lower left corner to the upper right corner where we meet Excel Street. So the main hospital is a two-story, but we're able to enter the building on the upper level as well as the lower level. So what that means to the main hospital is we're able to design it much like the current hospital is, so that we have all of the acute care, LTC, and emergency department on the upper level, which was a huge issue for staffing and trying to keep the nurses within a compact plan as they move from program to program. The lower level of the main hospital is the outpatient, mainly the outpatient and imaging departments. So physical therapy, the clinic, we have other support functions down there too, like the kitchen, laundry, and those sorts of things. The service yard, as Jay mentioned, is positioned between the two buildings. And in that service yard are a lot of the noise generating exterior functions of the hospital, the generator, and some of the delivery areas. And we've contained those within the building to eliminate the noise to the neighbors, but also to provide an efficient way to get goods to the departments on that lower level. We are continuing to try to be a good neighbor. As I mentioned, most of the noise producing functions are contained within concrete walls. But we've also added screening elements to the west end of the development. And then we're being very, very careful up by the emergency turnaround that we don't impact what we're calling the knoll, that really mature stand of trees that is in the upper part of the site. We've always really liked that stand of trees, and we nestled the building around it, and so that we can maintain that very mature, really nice element on the site. And then along the lower right side of the site, between the development and PIA, there's a natural drainage creek that flows through there. Where again, with very mature trees, we're not impacting any of that. And in fact, the Corps of Engineers was very positive when they reviewed our application that we were keeping that as a green buffer. I might point out to the Kinderskog folks in the room that we did contain the hospital development to the southwest of the existing trail. And we were very purposeful in trying not to develop the upper right corner of the property. We always felt that potentially that might be a place for some future complementary program that might be placed on that site. So the other slide I brought tonight was the exterior rendering, and Phil, you could put that up. I will say we've been working very, very closely with the departments to design the internal parts of the building. I'm not sharing those tonight, but we are still working very closely with the departments to right size and make their departments as efficient as we can make them. Some of that is reworking how the program is going to operate. But the goal is to, again, be very collaborative and efficient and provide them the space that some of the efficiencies that they currently enjoy in terms of overlapping staff and the like. The exterior rendering, Phil, if you have that up.
Yep.
We like to show pictures of what it's like, most of the time. And I know it's dark most of the time. And that's really when you want the building to really invite people in. So this image is one of my favorites. We're really trying to make this building fit within a residential area of town. And we're very conscious that the building is rather large, but we are doing everything we can do as architects to break down the scale and make sure that it fits within the community setting that you've established for it. And this rendering kind of shows where we're at with that, trying to create multiple exterior finishes that complement each other. We've got an idea for some integrated artwork, which is right inside the front door of the facility. As you can see, the colored mural on that inside wall. The other thing we're trying to do with the building is bring splashes of color in appropriate places. I know what it's like I grew up in Juneau as a kid, and I could never imagine why they kept painting the buildings there gray, because it seemed to be the absolute worst color to endure the winter, just more grayness. And so we're pretty excited about these splashes of color that we've introduced in the design. And that's all I really have to report tonight. We're about 35% through the design process, and we're continuing to develop the overall aesthetic and details. And we're happy to report back at a future meeting on our progress.
Thank you, Ryan. What's that? What's that? Oh, I don't know if that. But so moving on to the Treasury CCPF grant, the background being the Department of the Treasury has approved a $20 million grant to the state of Alaska for Wellness Education Resource Center portion of the new medical center project. The state will issue a $20 million subaward to PMC, all of which must be used in support of the planning, design, construction, and fit out of the Wellness Education and Resource Center building. Action required, execute award and authorization to expend funds. I would entertain a motion that the Petersburg Medical Center Board of Directors authorizes the CEO to finalize the CCPF grant agreement with the state and expend these funds for the planning, design, construction, and fit out of the Wellness Center Education and Resource Center building. Would someone entertain that motion?
Heather Kahn will entertain that motion.
I'll second.
Joe seconded that motion. It is open for discussion. Yes.
If it's a wellness and teaching building and Kinderskogs is all of that, how come they're not in there?
I mean, wellness is in there, so, but we spent a lot of time talking with the architects on the space programming of that, and the space that we had allotted. I mean, that just wasn't in the. That wasn't in the, I mean, we have a whole separate conversation related to the space programming that we had. I think I probably can ask Jay to go into that. But it was Jared was on there, that meeting where we had to really look at what the Treasury approved. We had to go back and forth with the Treasury with very specifics to what they would approve and what they weren't under the monitoring, and the criteria, the public health monitoring, the wellness and education under that program. And so we had to use their criteria to build on that, really is where we landed on that. And so they accepted the MRI. We tried many different reiterations of different kinds of programs on there. So, yeah. It came up, certainly, without question.
I just hadn't heard anything about it, and I was like, well, they're renting elsewhere, and we're building this building that tripled in size. Like, I was just...
It's 79,000 square feet. It didn't triple. It's 50. It's total. It's 19,000 square feet on the work side, and then 59,000 square feet on the main hospital side. So it's maybe a third bigger. So we have running about 50,000 square feet currently, and so we're at maybe a third bigger, not a triple.
Yes.
Hi, this is Micah. I'm just curious. I see that it's the projected completion of the Wellness Educational Resource Center. Thank you. I'm trying not to use the acronyms for people out there. Is projected for summer of 2025. And at that point, when the building is completed and it's handed over to PMC, Petersburg Medical Center, to maintain and operate and stuff, is there already a plan and ideas like of how to staff and fund that besides grants and stuff, like, you know, what does that financial look like for staffing and operating and maintaining?
Yeah, it's a good question. One of the things that we are required to do under this is follow our certificate of need process in order to, with the state, so that we are working on that currently to allow some of the same services. We are requesting a waiver on that. And the idea is that those programs that would be in there would be cost-based reimbursed as well under our same cost report, algorithm. And so that's sort of the one of the areas where we would pay just similar to where we are right now as far as costing. So our cost-based reimbursement, or our cost report has as Jason had talked about, has an expense that we allocate towards that, and it helps get a return onto the Medicare and for our submission to the cost report. I don't know, Jason, do you want to talk or expand a little bit on that? We still have some work to do on getting our consultant, Marty, to talk with the state on that and solidify those things, but that's the plan.
Yeah, so the question was how do we pay for operating the building once we get into it? And number one, I think it's important to recognize the addition of the MRI program. That is definitely a revenue producing program that will help expand the revenues and also the diagnostic capabilities and other services back on the main campus. I mean, just imagine if we can do some pain management procedures and other minor orthopedics and podiatry, it just really will expand our revenues back on the main campus. The public health is in there. They'll pay rent to help pay for utilities and other expenses, but there will be some departments that will be moved up there, such as IT. So there's no additional staff. It's just a new space and it will free up space back on the main building to expand services down here during the interim until we are able to get into the larger hospital. And as was indicated, a portion of the expense of the new building, well, actually quite a bit. When we look at the cost report, it doesn't care where the cost of these things happen. They get depreciated out amongst all the departments. So we take the cost of running this building. It is allocated out to all departments of the hospital based upon the square footage that they have. So that depreciation expense increases, and it will increase a little bit of our reimbursements. Not as much as the big hospital will. I mean, when we get the whole project done, our revenues for both the nursing home and the hospital will go up substantially. But this work building will have a material impact on our cost-based reimbursement for hospital programs.
Do you want to, if you don't mind me adding to something? I apologize because when I'm, just thinking about it, I just assume, especially with the space conversation, everyone knows where we are with that. So just to clarify, the way that we did the Treasury work building, it wasn't a total add-on. We didn't say, here's the hospital and then here's the work building. What we did, and this was the part that was really challenging. So my ask was that we not expand the main hospital building huge, and then all of a sudden we have this additional building on top of that. The ask was that we take existing space that's in the hospital that we can then put into the work building that we currently have that would detract from the cost of the main hospital. So instead of the main hospital being 79,000 square feet, we wanted to take extra space and put it into there. So the things that occupy that area are health information management, HIM. We have the wellness center. We have materials management. We have our facilities. So our facilities program that's in there. We'll have the morgue in there. We will have, administration will be in there. So to me, the cost per square foot in that work building is orders of magnitude less than a hospital building. A hospital building is what they call an I occupancy, meaning that under Fire Life Safety Code, people are living there in that building 24/7 in both the inpatient unit and on the long-term care. So those are people's homes. And when people come into the ER, that's also we have to stay overnight. Those are different fire life safety codes than a medical office building. And so the medical office building, which is kind of what we created on the work building, has maybe a cost that's $300, $400, $500 less per square foot than the high occupancy. So the idea, like why we didn't ask, to go back to your question, and again, I takes my brain a little bit to catch up. My apologies, Kim, is that when we looked at the space on the program side, yes, we do rent space on the Kinderskog program, but we want to maximize the value of that space, meeting the requirements of the Department of Treasury, take away some of the space on the main hospital, because that is really that's a lot of money. Those are, that's $1,000 a square foot. Now we're looking at $600 a square foot. It's a lot less on a estimated on cost analysis. So that's kind of how those decisions were made as far as where that space can go, and also try to maintain the hospital side, just so the hospital is about as efficient as possible. We don't want any extra, we want to maximize the efficiency, crossover of space from nursing, from the ER into the inpatient to long-term care. We don't want additional staff in there. We don't want to have a building that all of a sudden then we have to hire, 10, 20 more staff to both maintain and to have more staffing in different areas. We want to maintain that ability to crossover staffing. Those are very important things into our programs. So we have the federal funds to be able to have a full turnkey work building, taking away the cost of a main hospital building, which is a win-win in many different situations for that. So I apologize for not explaining that better, but that's really how those decisions were made as far as trying to maximize the efficiencies of that funding, so we could make the main hospital building less costly.
This is Micah. Thank you, Phil. That answered a lot of questions of maybe where people are going. Where is this work building coming from?
Yeah, I know. I'm sorry. My apologies. I live in this. I'm like, everyone should know this, but I don't. And again, I'm trying to communicate that effectively.
So back to my question that Jason was talking numbers for. You did mention, the word expanding is used a lot, and that you mention that not any additional staff would be needed for staffing this, then, because you're moving departments from the main hospital up to the work building?
Yeah, the only thing in terms of my memory at this current time and the blueprint, as we've talked about this, we'll need a new MRI tech and a receptionist for that area. But most everything else is moving programs that currently exist or department services like medical records or IT. We're just moving those staff up there into that space. So it's not a lot of additional FTEs that would be hired for those programs up there.
Yeah, I was just curious because, you add this building, and once you take possession of it, when the construction is done, then you have to pay like the light bill, the heating, the groundskeeping, the snow removal, all the maintenance and stuff. So like you still have the old hospital building that's still operating and providing the existing services. So like, do we have a plan other than grants in place to pay for those costs?
Once again, that comes back to the importance of the MRI being added to that. I mean, the MRI is a very large revenue generator. So prior to adding the MRI, I was just looking at like maintenance, medical records, administrative. So there's no revenue being generated in that building. And so when the grant came back through and we were able to fit in a revenue service that could fit in that building and a new revenue service that's not available in the community, it just really made that pro forma make sense.
So do we have a projection of revenue that could be earned from that MRI service based on like how many people are referred for MRI, annually and things like that?
Yes, it's in the process. We have a sketch of it currently in terms of what we're working on, but we're working on the larger project in terms of not only the work building, but the hospital, and how is this sustainable after the construction of this building is done. So I don't have anything to present tonight, but it is in process. And we can get it to the resource committee meeting here in the next month or two.
Thank you.
very valuable questions. I greatly appreciate that. Sustainability is the most important. And as I was talking about earlier, the cost report really is so important. Even though this building is up the hill and we think of it as being something else, it flows through the cost report of the main hospital that's currently exists. And so that is another way in which it's sustainable. So those utility bills, everything, all of that gets lumped into one bucket, if you will, and it gets allocated to all of the departments that currently exist and the new ones, flows through the cost report. So I would say easily, in our cost-based reimbursement, 60% of our costs flow through the cost reports. So even 60% of that new building will flow through that cost report.
Okay, I just didn't know. And also another little question I had, I guess not a little question I had, was also with like being fairly short-staffed in certain departments and stuff. I see there's a lot of job openings. Is that going to affect being able to have a potential new facility operating at the level that it needs to produce the revenues with the MRI machine and do the services that are all planned?
Certainly, every industry in our current economy is struggling. Baby boomers have retired. There's, the generations. It's difficult, and everything that we're trying to do in the organization right now is really geared around recruitment and retention. And one of the most powerful ways to recruit and retain staff is a nice building. Then the second one, and we've been talking about it tonight, is how do we care for our children? So that's Kinderskog. And so there's just a lot of work. We had a leadership retreat just yesterday, and it was wonderful to sit and speak with the department managers and talk about how do we create that environment that is attractive. So I can't guarantee, we need to find an MRI tech. That will be difficult, but not as difficult to say as hiring a physician or something of that nature. And we can certainly try to offer some scholarships when we have some time and be able to train some of our existing staff. That would be the best, is if we could just make our current existing staff a little bit, upgrade their skills and make them more productive in terms of their time. But other than that, I would see a receptionist or two in that space. Everyone else, for the most part, is just relocating up there, like medical records and those types of things.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Joe?
Yeah, I'm looking at the timeline here. This is Joe. It talks about the Wellness Education Resource Center being complete in the summer of 2025. Just for the sake of argument, like, let's say in February of 2025, the building is nearing completion, but it's not complete, and the $20 million is gone. It's spent. What do you think would happen in that instance? I mean, would work on the building cease for a time? Would PMC have to look at reserves to finish the building? Would there be other sources of funding we'd be looking at that time?
Do you want me to answer that one?
Yes, please.
So the most important issue there is, when we begin the project, we enter into a GMP, a gross maximum price. So we lock in our total cost of building the project at the beginning. There could be a little bit of issues with, just unforeseen conditions or bad weather or something like that. So we'll have contingencies built into that construction price. And so in how we're doing this, we're not starting a building that is 80% funded and wondering where the remaining 20% is coming. When we start this work building, it is fully funded and will be able to be completed by the deadline that the Treasury has set.
I can have Jay answer that as well, on the project manager.
Yeah, thank you. I'll just mention that within the $20 million budget, we've got about $1.3 million in contingency, which is pretty industry standard at the beginning of a project. It's about 9% of the construction costs. So we have contingency in the budget, and we also have extra time. Treasury says they don't require that the building be complete until December of 26. So we've got more than a year buffer before we hit the Treasury deadline. And that was key in them approving the $20 million, that schedule, and our budget on how we were going to expend their $20 million.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Sure. Call for question.
I call for the question. This is Marlene.
Okay, be a roll call vote. I'd like you to state your name when you give your yes or no. Is somebody calling out the names? Okay, go ahead.
Thanks. Joe?
Yes.
Marlene?
Yes.
Jared?
Yes.
Heather?
Yes.
Kim? Micah?
No.
Passes. Okay, moving on to election of officers. Be for the position of president, vice president, and secretary. Desire to be president?
I nominate Jared. I second that.
I move nomination be closed.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any nominations for vice president?
I'd like to nominate Cindy Lagadakis to be the PMC vice president, board vice president. This is Joe.
I'll second. Was that a second? I'm supposed to do that, right? Yeah, okay.
Closing that nomination, or are we keeping it? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Nominate secretary.
I nominate Marlene Cushing. This is Kim.
This is Joe, and I will second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, do I have a motion to go into executive session?
I'd like to make a motion that the board enter executive session to consider medical staff appointments and reappointments.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor?